Hey guys, tonight we begin in a place that smells like yesterday's fish market, lost a bet with an open sewer. It's Paris, the 18th century version. You're not a noble, not an artist, and definitely not sipping wine by candlelight. No, tonight you're a street sweeper. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. You wake up in a tenement, crammed into a creaking attic shared with six others and one particularly judgmental pigeon. The air is thick with smoke from last night's fire and the distinct scent of unwashed humanity. There's no alarm clock, just the shriek of a rooster two alleys away and the cold slap of a draft sneaking through the gaps in the wooden walls. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're barely awake when your nose starts to protest. The entire city seems to be fermenting, not just the air, but the people, the clothes, and the streets themselves. You swing your legs off your straw filled mattress and immediately regret it. The floor is damp, not from spilled water. No, that would be too civilized. It's just general damp, a mystery marinade of rainwater, rat pee, and existential dread. You lace up your boots, which is generous language for what are essentially two flaps of stitched leather held together by string and prayer. Your jacket, still wet from yesterday's drizzle, smells like a smoked herring wearing disappointment. You grab your broom, a sad bundle of twigs tied to a stick, and head out. Outside, the sky is still dark, a foggy gray that hugs the rooftops and disguises the source of most smells. Paris doesn't sleep, it stews. And you're part of the early shift, the ones who try to fight the night's debris before daylight reveals the full horror. Horse droppings, sloshed chamber pots, last night's vomit from someone who drank more wine than hope. It's all waiting for you. You trudge toward the Rue Mouffetard, one of the city's most charmingly disgusting thoroughfares. Every building leans slightly, like it's tired of standing. Every window creaks, and every resident, apparently, thinks the street is a toilet. You knew this was the job. You just didn't know the street would be actively working against you. You're not alone, of course. Fellow sweepers shuffle by, some with carts, others with brooms worse than yours. One man drags a barrel on wheels that squeaks like a tortured squirrel. You nod at each other without speaking. What is there to say? You all stink. You're all awake too early, and you're all wondering if the puddle you're standing in is just rainwater or something more personal. One of your coworkers, Jean, spits on the ground and mutters something about how it used to be worse. You're not sure how, but historians do tell us that early Paris had no proper sewage system. Waste was tossed from windows with a shout of Garde à l'eau, which loosely translates to good luck below. You learned the hard way that not everyone shouts. You start sweeping. It's a strange rhythm, like mopping a Jackson Pollock painting made of slime. The broom drags, catches on cobbles, and spreads things around more than it collects. You develop a technique, scrape, sweep, step, like a tragic dance number no one asked for. You scrape up animal waste, dead leaves, chunks of something unidentifiable, and the occasional soggy cabbage. Who throws away a cabbage? As you work, a lady in a powdered wig walks by. She lifts her dress elegantly as she passes you, her tiny lapdog barking from his perch in a wicker basket. She does not look at you. Most people don't. You are part of the scenery, like the lampposts and the rotting fish heads. And here's the kicker: you're doing essential work, truly. The city would drown in filth without you, but there's no glory in it. No thank you notes, just the occasional shouted insult if someone slips on something you missed. Or worse, a fine. Yes, you can be fined for not sweeping well enough. Louis XV's City Council once passed ordinances requiring citizens to clean the area in front of their homes. If they didn't, you got the blame, and your wages docked. And what were those wages? Almost laughably low, a few sous a week, enough to afford bread, onions, and not much else. Forget wine, forget meat, forget the idea of retirement. You'll sweep until your back gives out or your lungs fill with street dust and decide they've had enough. As you move from block to block, you notice something in the gutter. It's moving. You lean in. A rat. Huge. He looks up at you like you're the intruder. You back away. He does not. You name him Pierre and silently agree to never make eye contact again. You check the sun, or the pale glow that pretends to be sunlight in Paris winter. Your shift has barely started. There are miles of streets left, and your broom is already fraying. You step into a fresh puddle of something with the consistency of regret. Your foot slips. You regain your balance, barely. Just another reminder that Paris is a city of romance, art, and profoundly slippery substances. You wipe your hand on your coat. Bad idea. Now both your hand and your coat smell worse. You wonder briefly if aristocrats ever imagine what it's like to sweep their streets. Probably not. They're still asleep, dreaming of perfume and pastries. Meanwhile, you're elbow deep in what might be soup. You hope it's soup. Historians still argue whether street sweepers like you were part of any formal guild or just loose groups of the desperate. Either way, the job was dangerous. Not from enemies, from the job itself. Slippery stones, contaminated cuts, overwork. You've seen coworkers disappear after a fever. No one investigates. You're just gone. And still, you keep sweeping. Because someone has to. Because the city never stops being filthy. Because you've got nothing else. You keep sweeping even as the sky shifts from smudged ink to a reluctant gray. Morning is technically arriving, though the sun seems just as reluctant to be here as you are. Paris. Mornings are not the hopeful, golden things painters like to pretend they are. They're damp, cranky, and smell like old cheese and wet stone. Your hands are already stiff, your shoulders aching from the rhythmic scrape, sweep, scrape, and you've still got a good chunk of the Rue Saint Denis ahead of you. This street is extra generous with its filth, being one of the livelier arteries of the city. It sees everything: carts, dogs, fishmongers, street vendors, noble carriages, and more bodily fluids than you'd care to count. Each step is a gamble. You might land on solid cobble or plunge into a puddle with the texture of chunky gravy. Your boots, if they can be called that, are already soaked through. The worst part? The job doesn't wait for the city to wake up. You have to get ahead of it, which means pushing your broom through refuse before the shopkeepers open their shutters, before the bakers light their ovens, and definitely before any noble's delicate slippers touch the street. You're not here to be seen. You're here to erase the evidence of human existence before anyone important steps in it. And the evidence is plentiful. You pass a pile that was, not long ago, a dog. Possibly. It's hard to tell anymore. Flies are attending the scene. You make a mental note to ask your supervisor, Pierre the Elder, not to be confused with Pierre the Rat, whether it should be removed or simply swept to the side. Pierre's rule is, if it's moving, leave it. If it's not, and no one's looking, sweep it to the river. By now your stomach is growling. You've been up since before the church bells rang, and your only fuel was a crust of bread so hard it could qualify as a building material. You're supposed to get a break at sunrise. Supposed to being the phrase here. You duck into a quieter alley, not for rest, but for tactical avoidance. There's a carriage barreling through, and the driver has clearly mistaken you for a speed bump. You lean against a wall slick with moisture and try not to think about what part of the wall that moisture came from. The stench here is different. Less manure, more mildew, and rot. You hear something scurry above you. Probably a cat. Hopefully a cat. While you catch your breath, you take a moment to inspect your tools. Your broom is frayed. Again. It started the week as a proud bundle of twigs bound tight with rope and optimism. Now it looks like a bird's nest after a bad divorce. The handle is splintering. You've got a blister on your palm where the wood rubs. You know this blister will become a callus, which will eventually crack open, then probably get infected. And no, there's no ointment. There's spit, maybe, and hope. The cart you're pushing, if you're lucky enough to have one, is a rickety wooden box on uneven wheels. It moans like a ghost with every step. It was built sometime during the reign of someone long dead, and it shows. You've patched it yourself more than once using bits of twine, bent nails, and once, memorably, a chunk of your own shirt. The wheel still wobbles like it's drunk. Still, you carry on. Because what's the alternative? You tried fishing once, froze your hands off, and caught a boot. You tried day labor at the tannery, but the stench was worse than this. Yes, somehow. And sweeping at least offers variety. Every day is a new parade of Parisian waste. No two piles are the same. Some even sparkle in the right light. You tell yourself this to avoid screaming. A constable walks by. He doesn't greet you, just grunts and spits near your feet. You nod politely, because that's what you do when someone spits on your boots in the 18th century. You nod politely and keep sweeping, because talking back is a luxury. And luxuries are for people who don't wear trash as perfume. Up ahead, a baker is opening shop. The scent of warm bread hits you like a memory of childhood you never had. It's soft, buttery, full of promise. And absolutely not for you. You think about asking for a crust, but the last time you did, he threw a wet cloth at your head and told you to sweep faster. Street's still a mess, he said, as if you'd personally invited the horses to relieve themselves in front of his door. Historians still debate whether Parisian street cleaners in your time were officially sanctioned city workers or just desperate souls hoping for a few coins from merchants. The answer seems to be yes. Some were employed by the city, some worked for specific neighborhoods or guilds, others just swept because someone had to, and occasionally someone paid. You don't even remember which category you fall into anymore. You've been doing it long enough that the lines have blurred. You sweep, someone tosses you a copper. You sweep again. Occasionally, someone drops something valuable, money, a trinket, a bit of bread. You pretend not to notice, then swoop in like a hawk when they turn away. It's the closest thing to excitement you'll get all week. Unless you count the time a goat chased you 3 blocks with a cabbage in its mouth. You don't count that. You still have the scar. You pass a church, its bells just starting to ring, a sign that your first round is nearly done. You pause a moment, leaning on your broom like an old man leaning on a shovel. You try not to breathe through your nose. It doesn't help. The smell is in you now, under your nails, in your clothes, part of your soul. You haven't felt clean since last midsummer. and that was only because you accidentally fell into the Seine. You look at your hands, dirt caked, blistered, knuckles scraped raw from pushing your cart into things that didn't want to be moved. You sigh, lift your broom, and trudge forward, because the Rue Montorgueil is calling. And you know what it's full of? Fish guts. Lots and lots of fish guts. The Rue Montorgueil greets you not with a wave, but with a slap. A slap of fish scented air so aggressive it makes your eyes water. It's not a street, it's an olfactory battlefield. The market stalls aren't even fully open yet, but somehow the ground is already coated in scales, fins, and what you sincerely hope is just seaweed. You dig your broom into the sludge, trying to create a clear walking path for the vendors who will soon pretend you don't exist. Every sweep smears the grime further, like trying to clean a wine spill with jam. You bend low, apply more pressure. Your back sends up a quiet protest. You ignore it. You always do. You pass a butcher's stall that smells like iron and ambition. A cat slinks under the table, its mouth bloody, dragging what appears to be an entire tail. You nod at it. Mutual respect. You both work the streets. You both scavenge. Then come the rats. At first it's just one. Bold, curious, maybe even charming, in that plague vector kind of way. But where there's one, there's always more. Soon, you spot the flicks of tails in alley shadows. You don't scream. You just adjust your route slightly and mutter, "Excusez-moi," to the rodent traffic jam forming beside a drain. Paris in the 1700s is many things: romantic, grand, revolutionary, eventually. But clean? Not so much. Sure, by now the city has established some basic waste management. The word voirie even exists, a term for public sanitation. But implementation, that's another story. Some streets get swept. Others, well, let's just say they develop a personality. You reach the corner where Rue Montorgueil meets a side alley so narrow you could sneeze and hit both walls. This is where the chamber pots get dumped. No ceremony. Just a loud shout of "Garde à l'eau," and then a splash that could end your week. You've learned to walk close to the buildings and never, ever pause beneath a shutter. But today you're too slow. You hear the cry a beat too late. A window creaks open. A splash follows. Your shoulder is warm. Your coat is wetter than it was 5 seconds ago. You clench your jaw and count to 10. You could yell back, but what would be the point? They wouldn't hear you. Or worse, they would and laugh. You wipe your shoulder with your sleeve. It doesn't help. It just redistributes the problem. Still, you sweep. You clear a path for the baker's assistant, who tosses you a small end piece of bread as she passes. It's hard as stone, but you nod in thanks. It's the nicest thing anyone has done for you all week. You tuck it into your pocket like treasure. And treasure is relative, really. You once found a copper coin embedded in horse dung and declared it a windfall. You've kept buttons, pins, a dented thimble, and a brooch missing every gem. Once, you found half a glove and wore it proudly until the thumb gave up. You move past the fish stalls, onto the next section, an area that smells faintly of urine, desperation, and possibly cheese. You've learned not to ask questions. A child darts past you, barefoot, chasing a hoop made of bent wire. He nearly barrels into your cart and yells something rude in street slang that only children and criminals understand. You wave your broom like a flag of surrender and mutter, "Watch where you're rolling, Napoleon." He doesn't hear you or care. There are moments, rare ones, when the sun cuts through the grime. A shaft of light touches the edge of a rooftop. A pigeon flaps by, majestic for about 2 seconds before relieving itself, mid-flight. It lands on the bakery sign. You watch as the apprentice below it sighs in resignation. Everything in Paris, she once told you, eventually ends up dirty. You believed her. Your supervisor appears at the corner, Pierre the Elder. He's tall, thin, with a nose that could slice cheese, and a voice like wet gravel. He's dressed in what once may have been a uniform. Now it's more of a suggestion of authority, complete with a floppy hat and a whistle he never uses. You miss Rue Coquillière, he growls. No, I didn't, you reply. I swept it twice. They poured out more slop just after. He narrows his eyes, then sweep it thrice. You want to say something clever, something biting, something that will make him realize that maybe, just maybe, the problem isn't the sweepers. It's the people dumping garbage out their windows. But you say nothing, because arguing means attention. And attention is a dangerous thing when you're the lowest cog in a very dirty wheel. Historians still argue whether sweepers were city staff, neighborhood hires, or part-time laborers paid under the table. The answer? Yes. And none. And all. It depended on the arrondissement, the mood of the local council, and how loudly the neighbors complained. You, personally, are currently unpaid. Technically, you're doing civic duty in exchange for charity bread. You've signed no papers. No one knows your name at the town hall. But you show up because if you don't, someone else will take your broom and possibly your bed. Speaking of which, you're starting to fantasize about that straw mattress again. Not because it's comfortable, it isn't, but because it's not here. It doesn't smell like fish. It doesn't involve sweeping. You check the sun. It's climbing. Soon the streets will be crowded. Carts will roll over your freshly cleared gutters. Dogs will do dog things in the middle of your clean zone. Drunks will fall. Nobles will spit. Children will throw things. And you'll be back tomorrow to do it again. For now, you reach into your coat, retrieve the crust of bread, and nibble. It tastes like flour, dust, and a hint of mold. You close your eyes and imagine it's brioche. You fail, but the effort is appreciated. You take a breath, smell fish, regret it. Time to sweep again. The sun's creeping higher now, casting light across the city's rooftops and revealing just how much filth you didn't get to in time. Morning in Paris doesn't arrive with birdsong and laughter. It arrives with carts creaking over cobblestones, the clatter of wooden wheels on uneven stone, and the very particular sound of a man shouting at his donkey because it refuses to walk past a cabbage. You turn onto a new street, one you've seen 1,000 times, and yet each time it manages to invent new horrors. Rue des Petits Carreaux. It should be called Rue de the Petits Nightmares. The gutters here are particularly wide, which is both a blessing and a curse. A blessing because waste has somewhere to go. A curse because it goes. Your job here isn't to make things pristine. Let's be clear. This isn't Versailles. Your job is to push the refuse toward the central drain, dodging chickens, slippers, and suspicious puddles. That's it. Push it along. Keep things moving. Like a sewer's motivational speaker with a broom. You angle your broom and start again. The first push catches on something. Soft, squishy, and questionably organic. You don't look. The key to emotional survival is selective perception. Was it a rotten turnip? A rat? Someone's laundry? You'll never know. You'll never want to. Rounding the corner, you almost trip over a man asleep on the pavement. He's breathing, which makes him luckier than most. You consider waking him, but his eyes crack open and he gives you a look that suggests he may or may not be the city's unofficial crime boss. You nod. He nods. Mutual understanding. Neither of you wants to be here. Your broom catches on a loose cobblestone. You stumble. You swear. Internally, because saying it aloud might earn you a priest and a confession. Paris stones are like little traps laid centuries ago by mischievous masons. Each one has a wobble, a slope, or a tendency to store puddles deep in its seams, so your foot gets an unsolicited baptism. And remember, you're not just battling trash, you're battling time, because by mid morning, the fishmongers arrive in force. Not the charming kind, the yelling, elbowing, scale flinging kind. They have no time for sweepers. They barely have time for fish. They dump crates on the sidewalk like it's a war zone and begin shouting prices at volumes previously reserved for naval cannons. One woman, whom you've nicknamed Madame Anchovy, drops a bucket of what appears to be fish guts directly where you just cleared. You freeze, broom midair. She shrugs. It's the market. You consider responding. But what is there to say? You are, quite literally, beneath her notice. So you nod, your universal reaction to everything today, and keep sweeping. Again, somewhere up the block, a priest walks by holding a censer, and for a moment the air fills with incense. It's a brief, miraculous relief. You inhale deeply. Then a horse passes and undoes the miracle immediately. Paris giveth, and Paris very quickly taketh away. You stop at the water fountain, one of the few public ones still working. A steady stream of not quite clear water trickles from a carved lion's mouth. You splash your face. It helps. Not with cleanliness, obviously, but with the illusion of being refreshed. Illusion is all you've got. As you stand there dripping, a child walks by and asks if you're the poop man. You pause. Technically, yes. You could argue sanitation worker, but in this case, the child has cut to the heart of it. You give a regal nod. Indeed, the child beams like they just met a king. You feel oddly proud and immediately ashamed of feeling proud. You resume your work, now in the thick of the morning crowd. Carriages rattle by, splashing mud up your legs. A lady throws a wilted bouquet from her window. It lands with a sad plop beside your boot. Romantic gestures have no traction in this part of town. Historians still argue about just how bad the city's sanitation was before Baron Haussmann's reforms in the 19th century. But you don't need an academic debate. You're living the evidence. You are the evidence. Paris smells like 1,000 rotting things agreeing to cohabitate. The gutters run with strange broths. And beneath it all, you sweeping like a one-man defense line against the apocalypse. Your hands are starting to blister again. That one on your palm is splitting. You wrap it in a bit of cloth from your shirt hem. It doesn't help much. The broom handle is rough, and each stroke feels like a handshake with a cactus. Your stomach grumbles. You had that bit of bread earlier, but it didn't last. Hunger's become a background hum, like the bells or the rats. You get used to it. Sort of. You keep sweeping. You pass by a storefront window and catch your reflection. You look older than you are. Face smeared with dust, coat crusted with who knows what, and eyes slightly sunken from a lifetime of squinting at cobblestones. You wonder if anyone would recognize you clean. You wonder if you'd recognize yourself. As you pause near a bakery, an argument erupts behind you. Two merchants are yelling over who owns a patch of sidewalk. The louder one hurls a fish at the other. It misses and hits you square in the back. It is, without a doubt, a mackerel. You slowly peel it off your shoulder and place it gently on the windowsill beside you. You whisper to it, "Fly free." It does not fly. It flops. The merchants don't even notice. And again you sweep. Because the day is not over, and Paris is not getting cleaner. Lunch, if you can call it that, arrives with no fanfare. There is no bell, no whistle, no kindly overseer tapping a sundial and saying, "Go rest, my sweet heroic laborer." There is only your stomach twisting like a medieval laundry wringer and the slight softening of traffic around the Rue du Faubourg Saint-Denis. This is your cue. You slide your broom behind a crate, wipe your hands on your coat, which somehow makes both worse, and slouch into your designated lunch corner, a recessed nook beside a sewer grate that smells slightly less aggressive than the others. Slightly. You sit. The stone is cold. The air is not much warmer. You pull out the other half of your bread crust, the one you didn't finish earlier, and a wedge of gray cheese that was once white, then yellow, then slightly heroic for surviving this long in your pocket. It has the texture of old leather and the personality of a grumpy uncle, but it's edible. Probably. You chew slowly. Not to savor it. There is nothing to savor, but because chewing quickly would risk dislocating your jaw. The cheese fights back. You win. Barely. Around you, the city doesn't stop. Ever. A man passes pulling a handcart piled with eels. You're pretty sure they're still alive. One flops dramatically over the side like it's auditioning for opera. You nod in support. It's been a long day for all of you. A dog noses into your space. It looks at you. You look at it. You each understand what the other is thinking. If one of us dies first, the other gets lunch. It's oddly comforting. You toss the dog a crumb. It swallows it whole and stays, sitting beside you like a coworker on break. Neither of you speaks. There's nothing to say. Your lunch break is technically 15 minutes, but time's slippery when measured in street filth and sun angles. You stretch your legs, which crack like a bad floorboard, and sigh. Then a splash. Your instincts have honed themselves like those of a jungle predator. You know that sound. You turn slowly, already dreading what you'll see. A chamber pot, just emptied. Directly uphill from your current position. You stand, you move. Too late. A stream of amber-colored vengeance trickles down toward your boots. You sidestep it, barely saving your toes from baptism. The dog looks at you as if to say, "This is why I'm not a street sweeper." You can't argue. Back to work. You retrieve your broom, now slightly more warped from resting against something damp, and resume your noble task, pushing other people's regrets toward a drain that is, at best, decorative. The drain grates are mostly clogged with leaves, feathers, string, and something that might have been a hat. You jam the broom in, wiggle it. The sludge shifts grudgingly. You feel like Sisyphus, if Sisyphus had to deal with fish guts and city urine. Occasionally, someone thanks you. Not often, but it happens. A woman with a basket of turnips nods and says, "Mercy." You nearly fall over in surprise. You nod back so enthusiastically your hat falls off into the gutter. You retrieve it. It is now 12% heavier. You put it back on anyway. Style is dead. Some kids run past, kicking a pig's bladder. It bounces off a wall and smacks into your cart, knocking over your bucket. The bucket rolls, spilling a slurry of who knows what across the stones. One child yells, "Pardon!" and then immediately follows it with a scream of laughter. You resist the urge to invent time travel solely to give them a timeout in 2025. You retrieve the bucket. It's dented now, more than before. You briefly fantasize about throwing it into the Seine and walking away. But then what? You'd still be poor, just slightly wetter. So you sweep. The sun reaches its apex and then begins the slow, arrogant descent toward evening. You know this part well. It's deceptive. You think, maybe the worst is over. But Paris saves surprises for late in the day. A cart overturns ahead of you. A loud crash. You hustle over and discover the contents: cabbages, some bruised apples, and one very stunned chicken. The merchant is yelling. You help him retrieve what you can. He doesn't thank you, but he throws you an apple with a chunk missing. You accept it like it's a bar of gold. You eat it while sweeping up the mess. There's a certain irony here. You're cleaning the thing you're eating while you eat it. If that's not Parisian multitasking, nothing is. And now comes the strangest moment of the day: stillness. It happens only briefly, around the third hour past noon. For some reason, the street grows quiet. The market slows. The church bells pause. Even the pigeons seem less aggressive. You stand still, broom in hand, and take in the silence. It lasts 17 seconds. Then a dog fight breaks out near a sausage cart. You're back at it. Again. Historians still argue whether these sweepers had shifts or simply worked until they dropped. Based on your current reality, it's the latter. There's no end time, only the moment when your limbs give out and you sink into sleep fully clothed, hoping not to dream of drains. Your hands are numb, your feet are raw. But the streets are, well, not clean, but let's say, less offensive. A few drops of rain begin to fall. You look up at the sky, which answers your prayers with a sigh and a drizzle. You mutter something about timing. The dog from earlier trots past you again, looking smug. You whisper, "Don't you dare." He does. Right in the middle of the street you just swept. You sigh and sweep. As the rain gains confidence, it transforms from a polite sprinkle to a full-blown interrogation. Not a downpour exactly. No, that would at least have the decency to rinse the streets clean. This is the miserable kind of rain that falls in sheets, just thick enough to soak your shoulders, dampen your spirit, and stir every pile of forgotten sludge into a festival of filth. You adjust your coat. Not that it helps. It's soaked through, clinging to you like a cold, judgmental towel. Your hat droops like a wilted flower, and the soggy rim funnels water directly down your back every time you look down to sweep, which is always. Welcome to Weather Paris Edition. Unpredictable, dramatic, and determined to make your life harder. The cobblestones turn into slick, shining traps. Your boots, which were barely functioning as footwear before, now squelch with every step like wet sponges wrapped in regret. You lose traction twice and narrowly avoid face planting into a puddle that has the exact aroma of boiled cabbage and poor decisions. The water rushes toward the gutters, but the drains aren't interested. They were overwhelmed 5 minutes ago. Now they're throwing in the towel, literally, as someone appears to have stuffed one into a grate. You kneel, mutter something unrepeatable under your breath, and poke at it with the handle of your broom. It doesn't move. You poke harder. Still nothing. You pause, sigh, and reach in with your bare hand. Whatever dignity you once had is long gone, and honestly, this is not the worst thing you've touched today. You fish out the towel, or is it an old shirt, and watch the murky water swirl down with a satisfying slurp. That's your big win of the day. Celebrate it. People are ducking under awnings now, lifting skirts, cursing the weather as if it's a personal betrayal. A gentleman with a powdered wig holds his coat over his head and glares at you like you summoned the storm. You smile and tip your hat, which unfortunately tips more water down your back. He scurries off. You resume sweeping. Rain doesn't mean you stop. If anything, it makes your work more urgent. When gutters flood, waste backs up. And when waste backs up, the entire block smells like an unwashed cheese shop during a heat wave. You know this. The baker knows this. And most importantly, the local constable knows this, and he has no sense of humor. So you slog onward, carving little trenches through the street muck, trying to channel water away from shops, doorways, and your own cart, which is beginning to float slightly. You grab a loose brick and wedge it under one wheel to stop the slow drift. Behind you, someone laughs. A child, sheltered under a too big coat, is watching you paddle trash like a gondolier in the canals of Venice. You wave at her with mock grandeur and declare, "And now we enter the romantic waterways of Paris." She giggles and ducks behind her mother. Small moments. You collect them like coins. Your broom is soaked now, heavier than before. It no longer brushes debris. It shoves it reluctantly, like a disgruntled barista nudging a half-empty coffee cup down the counter. You switch hands to give your wrist a break, but it doesn't help. Both arms feel like wet logs. You pause under the lip of a closed shop, take shelter where the overhang keeps the rain at bay. For 5 seconds, you're dryish. You shake your sleeves out. The water flicks off in arcs and lands squarely on a passing man's boots. He gives you a glare that could pickle an onion. You respond with the traditional Parisian shrug and continue standing there like an unusually damp statue. He walks off muttering. You stay under the awning a little longer than you should. It's quiet here. The rain drums on the roof above you in a way that almost sounds rhythmic, hypnotic. You allow yourself to close your eyes just for a moment. Only something hits your shin. You jolt awake. A barrel is rolling down the street, untethered, majestic, and entirely unbothered by physics. You spring forward, catching it before it crashes into the baker's display cart. He nods at you, doesn't say thank you, but nods. That's as close to affection as you'll get. You return the barrel to its owner, who doesn't realize it was missing. Of course not. Why would anyone notice the street sweeper? You're part of the background. The sky starts to brighten, the rain tapering off into scattered drops. The cobblestones glisten, slick and treacherous. You step carefully. You've fallen before. The last time it was into a pile of discarded oysters. Your hip still remembers. Historians still debate whether the sweepers of this era had any sort of union or organization. Some claim there were regional groups, little cooperatives of cleaners who shared tools and tips. Others insist most were independent, more scavenger than staff. You suspect it was both. Depends who you ask and how clean their boots are. You pass another sweeper now. Old Lucette, who's been sweeping longer than you've been alive. She's hunched, crooked, and carries a broom that looks older than most buildings, but she nods at you with a kind of shared understanding. We're here, still sweeping, still alive. Somehow, you return the nod. Rain or shine, muck or madness, the sweep goes on. You shift your cart, mop your face with a cloth that's long since ceased being useful, and whisper, "One more street." That's the trick, really. Don't think about how much is left. Just one more street, one more corner, one more pile of something mysterious and possibly sentient. You turn the corner and immediately regret it. The next block is a disaster. Flooded gutter, fish scraps, cabbage leaves, a broken crate, and what appears to be a hat full of eels. You blink. The hat blinks back. You take a deep breath, adjust your grip, and sweep. You drag your soggy broom into the battlefield that is Rue de Cléry. The eels have vanished, melted into the street stew, or slithered off to start a new life as opera critics you don't know. What remains is a patchwork of trash that defies logic, physics, and the concept of basic human decency. A cabbage leaf flaps mournfully in the breeze, sticking to your shin like a clingy ghost. You peel it off and fling it toward the gutter, where it lands atop something that might once have been a mitten or might still be moving. You don't investigate. You glance up at the balconies above, open shutters, potted plants, a pair of small children dangling a rope with a bucket tied to the end. One of them is fishing for attention. The other is fishing for your hat. You scowl. The bucket dips dangerously close to your head. You sidestep just in time to avoid being bonked, and the children dissolve into laughter. This is the hierarchy of the city. Nobles at the top, merchants just beneath, rats somewhere in the middle, and you, firmly scraping the bottom. Sometimes literally. You round a corner to find a wine barrel tipped on its side, slowly leaking what could either be very old wine or very new vinegar into the street. You consider tasting it, but the fact that a cat just sneezed in it dissuades you. Barely. You sweep around the puddle, drawing a little trench to guide the runoff toward the drain. This, right here, is your crowning achievement of the hour. Redirecting slightly sour liquid away from Madame Fouquet's pastry shop. You've done your good deed. She may or may not yell at you less today. May not. A couple walks by, arm in arm, dressed in fine silks and powdered wigs, laughing as if the world isn't composed of mud, disease, and broken barrels. They step daintily over a pile of horse manure, still steaming, and toss a coin toward you. It lands in the muck. You stare at it. You sweep around it. You debate whether it's worth digging in. It's silver. You dig. Your fingers sink into the mixture like spoons into warm porridge. You retrieve the coin, wipe it on your coat, and add it to your pouch. You now possess approximately 3 coins, each with its own backstory and likely several diseases. You stand, wipe your hand again, and continue, as always. The sky begins to shift toward late afternoon. Still light out, but the edges of the buildings cast longer shadows now, and the scent in the air changes. Less fish, more chimney smoke. You pass a roasted chestnut vendor who pretends not to see you. The smell is warm, nutty, and unfair. You dig in your pouch. 3 coins. You pause. You stare. You buy one. The vendor raises an eyebrow. For a sweeper? You nod. Just one. He hands it over with 2 fingers. Like passing a note to a questionable friend. You clutch the warm paper cone like it's holy. The chestnut burns your tongue a little. You do not care. You eat slowly, one nut at a time, savoring the simple fact that for these 3 minutes, you are a person. Not a broom, not a nuisance. A person eating something warm and not gray. And then it happens. A carriage barrels down the street, large black horses foaming at the mouth, a crest you don't recognize but instinctively know you should fear. You dive out of the way just in time. The wheel catches the corner of your cart and flips it, sending your tools, rags, and dignity flying across the street. Your broom lands handle down in a puddle. Your bucket rolls, clangs, stops. A brush you haven't seen in weeks clatters to the edge of the gutter, and your last 2 chestnuts are gone, vaporized, sacrificed to the gods of nobility and recklessness. You stand, breathing hard, soaked again, not from rain this time, but from indignity. You stare at the receding carriage. You wonder, not for the first time, what would happen if you hurled your broom like a javelin. Instead, you start picking up your scattered belongings. Lucette appears beside you, her eyes squinting against the setting sun. Carriage? You nod. She grunts. They always aim. You nod again, then sweep. There is no sympathy in the streets of Paris. No safety net. Only more corners, more messes, More opportunities for your spine to pop like an old accordion. You drag your upended cart back into position. One wheel's cracked. You don't have a replacement. You wedge a folded cloth under it. Problem solved, in the loosest sense of the word. And you sweep. Your hands are trembling now. Not from fear. No, that wore off weeks ago. From sheer fatigue. Every push of the broom takes more effort. Every bit of debris feels like it's nailed to the street. You pause to rub your wrists, and in that pause, you hear music. A violin played somewhere above you. Probably a student. It's not perfect. One note is a little sharp. The tempo inconsistent, but it's kind. It floats down, weaving between the grime and shouting and footsteps, and lands softly in your ears like silk. You stand there, broom in hand, crusted with filth, and you close your eyes. For 1 minute, you're not a street sweeper. You're someone listening to a song. Then a cabbage hits your boot. The spell is broken. You sigh and sweep. Evening begins its slow descent, and the color of the sky fades from dishwater gray to a kind of peachy brown that Parisians call romantic and sweepers call a warning. The air grows heavier, not cooler, just stickier, as smoke begins to curl from chimneys, mingling with the stench of street muck and humanity in its stickiest form. You pass a butcher's stall, packing up for the night. He nods. You nod. That's all the conversation you'll get. A trail of blood snakes down from his stall into the gutter. You sweep it toward the drain, trying not to think about how many other liquids that spot has hosted today. You glance at your hands. They don't feel like yours anymore. They're red, swollen, cracked at the knuckles, and dusted in a fine layer of ash, dirt, and what might be pastry crumbs. You lick your thumb. It's not pastry. You round the next corner, and suddenly you're in the part of town they don't put on postcards. Rue de la Lingerie. Sounds glamorous, doesn't it? It's not. Here, the filth has a different quality, more intimate, less seasonal. This is where the working girls lean in doorways, makeup smeared, shoes missing heels, voices rasped from laughter and smoke. One of them calls to you, looking sharp, mon balai. She blows a kiss, which lands somewhere near your cart. You grin despite yourself. They're kind to you, the women here. Maybe because they recognize shared exhaustion. Maybe because you once chased off a drunken sailor who thought your broom was a jousting lance. Whatever the reason, they treat you like a person. Rare currency. One of them, Clemence, waves from a window. Street's looking good, chérie. You bow theatrically. Only the finest dirt for you, madame. She laughs, then disappears inside. You wonder if she eats better than you. Probably. You wonder if she sleeps better. Also probably. You continue down the alley, which narrows like it's been holding its breath for a century. The walls are close, the shadows closer. You sweep carefully. This is rat country, and they don't like being disturbed. Sure enough, you hear the scuttle of tiny feet. You stop. They stop. You sweep again. They resume. It's like a dance. Only one of you knows the steps, and it's not you. There's a pile of refuse at the end of the alley that looks like it's thinking about becoming sentient. You approach it with the wary respect of someone meeting a king made entirely of laundry and soup bones. You jab it with the broom. It gurgles. You retreat 2 steps and pretend that never happened. Just around the corner is the tannery. You can smell it long before you see it. The stench is industrial grade, a nose-wilting mix of urine, animal skins, lime, and broken dreams. The workers are still inside, pounding hides and swearing. You sweep fast here, not because it's cleaner, it's not, but because the smell might crawl inside your ears and nest. You breathe through your mouth. You instantly regret it. As you push the broom along the edge of the curb, you step in something soft. You don't look down. There are moments in life where ignorance is the only defense mechanism. Across the street, someone is lighting lanterns. The soft glow flickers against the stones, catching in puddles, glinting off broken glass and discarded spoons. Paris is putting on its evening face. Elegant shadows, warm light, the illusion of charm, and underneath it, you, sweeping quietly. A nobleman in a powdered wig clatters by on horseback, hooves sending splashes of gutter water in all directions. One lands squarely on your sleeve. He does not look back. His wig bounces with each trot, smug and oblivious. You give it a quiet curse under your breath. The wig deserves it. You reach the square near Les Halles. The market is shutting down. Stalls are folding. Shouts turn to murmurs. Pigeons fight over a bruised pear. You pause here, not for rest, never for rest, but for pacing. There's one more hour of light, one more stretch of stone to tame. You lean on your broom and glance at the sky. Pink clouds drift lazily across the rooftops. They look clean. You envy them. A boy walks past with a basket of bread on his head, whistling. He's missing a shoe but grinning like he's won the lottery. You wave. He salutes you with a baguette. It's the friendliest interaction you've had all day. You check your coin pouch. Two left. You debate spending one on another chestnut cone. You decide against it. Tomorrow's breakfast needs planning, and coins don't sweep themselves off the ground. Historians still argue whether Paris's filth in the 18th century was worse than London's. Honestly, it's like comparing tragedies. Paris had more gutters, London more soot. Paris had wine, London had gin. Both had too many chamber pots and not enough compassion. What's certain is that street sweepers like you existed, underpaid, underfed, and overworked, propping up cities that pretended they didn't exist. You pass a bakery again. It's closing. The smell of fresh bread wraps around you like a cruel joke. A roll lands at your feet, tossed from the back door by a girl with a kind smile and a conspiratorial wink. You pick it up like it's treasure. It is. You eat slowly, then you sweep. Night creeps into Paris without asking permission. One moment you're sweeping in the amber hush of dusk, the next, you're squinting through the murky blue shadows of gaslights and candle glow. The city exhales. Windows shutter. Doors bolt. The respectable folk vanish indoors, leaving the streets to their true owners, cats, rats, drunkards, ghosts, and, of course, you. You turn onto Rue du Cimetière. Fitting, really. The name always gets a chuckle out of the sweepers, if only because it's the one street honest about what it smells like. The gutters here are deeper than most, and always seem to be weeping something. You don't sweep this stretch as much as you negotiate with it. The filth clings to the stones like it's paid rent. Each push of your broom is met with resistance, not just physical, but spiritual. It's as if the street resents being disturbed, like it prefers its crust of detritus, which is fair. At this point, it's practically heritage. You lean into the broom, arms trembling now, and remind yourself, almost done, just a few more streets. Behind you, footsteps. You tense. Not because you expect danger, but because you always expect danger. A drunkard stumbles past, singing something that might be a love song or might be a death threat. It's hard to tell. He tips an invisible hat in your direction and proceeds to urinate against a wall with the dedication of a man watering his dreams. You sigh, wait, then sweep it away. In the distance, a dog howls, a bell tolls. The city shifts again, like a great sleeping animal rolling over. And you, still broom in hand, keep working. Your cart's wobble has grown worse. The wheel squeals like it's trying to alert the authorities. You tighten the rope that holds it together, but it's fraying fast. If the cart goes, you're in trouble. It's the one thing that makes you look like a worker, and not just some vagabond with a stick and commitment issues. You round the bend toward Rue Saint Opportune, passing an apothecary that always smells like boiled roses and regret. The lantern outside flickers weakly, offering just enough light to cast shadows without revealing what they hide. You don't linger here, not since that time you found a tooth embedded in a cabbage. Instead, you focus on your next challenge, the Tavern Row. Oh, taverns. By day they're bustling, boisterous places full of spilled ale and shouted philosophy. By night they become something else entirely, portals of chaos. Patrons stumble out in twos and threes, carrying broken bottles and fresh opinions. And where opinions go, mess follows. You approach Le Cochon Sifflant, the whistling pig, appropriately named given its clientele. A man is vomiting into a crate while reciting a poem. A woman is arguing with a door. Someone is playing the lute badly. You sweep quietly past them, dodging a slippery mess that might once have been a sausage. A beer tankard rolls down the slope and gently taps your boot. You pick it up, place it on a windowsill, and continue. The tavern crowd watches you with mild curiosity, as if trying to remember what kind of mythical creature you might be. Oi, someone yells. Don't you ever stop? You shake your head. Only when I'm dead. That gets a laugh, mostly because they assume you're joking. You reach the far end of the street and find an old man slumped against a barrel. He's breathing, barely, and holding a bag of chestnuts like it's the crown jewels. You nudge him gently with your broom. Move along, Grandpere. He mutters something about Napoleon and drifts back into his dreams. You step over him and keep sweeping. This street is paved with stories. You find a dropped earring, a torn page from a book of love poems, a ribbon stained with wine. You pause at each item, tempted to build a collection. But what would you do with them? There's no museum of Parisian trash. There's barely even a shelf in your attic. So you push it all into the gutter, where it floats away like tiny bits of forgotten lives. Historians still argue whether street sweepers were ever allowed to unionize in 18th century Paris. You snort at the thought. Unionize? Half the sweepers you know can't even write their names. The idea of collective bargaining is laughable. You don't have the power to bargain with anyone, except maybe rats. And they're terrible negotiators. A man stumbles toward you, reeking of wine and poor decisions. You, broom boy, he slurs. You raise an eyebrow. You are not a boy, nor do you feel particularly broom-like. He sways dramatically, like a theater actor on his final scene. Tell me, does Paris sleep? You look him square in the eye. Only when it's ashamed. He blinks, then burps, then collapses into a pile of straw. You sweep around him. At this hour, you're not cleaning anymore. You're managing, rearranging the filth, making it less offensive, shifting it to corners where it won't trip a nun or start a philosophical debate with someone's shoe. The lanterns are dimming now, one by one. The city is growing quiet. Not peaceful, never peaceful, but hushed. As if even Paris has decided it needs to sit down and take a breath. You finish your last stretch of road and return to the alley behind the baker's shop. This is where you stash your cart. The wheel gives a final protest and rolls half a foot before collapsing like a drama queen. You pat it gently. Well done. You wedge the broom inside, loop the rope around the handles, and step back. Done. For now. You turn toward home and almost immediately trip over a loose cobblestone. Of course, you catch yourself before you hit the ground, a clumsy dance step between grace and absolute collapse. The cobblestone that nearly claimed you has no remorse. It juts from the street like a smug little monument to the day's final indignity. You mutter something unholy under your breath and keep walking. The streets are mostly empty now. The air's cooler, the smells muted but still present. Fish bones, tallow smoke, the faint tang of iron. Even in silence, Paris is noisy. The stones creak, the shutters sigh, and your own boots squelch softly with every step. The filth is never truly gone, it just waits. Your path home takes you past the tannery again. It's shuttered now, but the smell is eternal. You breathe through your mouth again. Another poor decision. A whiff of something sour hits your throat like a slap with a damp rag. You gag a little. You deserve it. Up ahead, someone is arguing with a lamppost. It appears to be a losing battle. You give them a wide berth. Your legs feel like they're made of damp laundry. Your arms, like they've been filled with sand. You've been sweeping for what feels like a week, and your reward is an attic with a slanted ceiling and a pillow that's mostly hay and lies. You climb the hill toward your block. Slowly. Every step is a negotiation with your knees. The city is quieter here, tucked in under its blanket of soot and moonlight. A cat darts across the street, carrying something that was once feathered and fast. It pauses, looks at you, then vanishes into a hole under a bakery. You envy its decisiveness. At the corner, you pass a fountain with a cracked cherub face. Water trickles from its mouth like it's trying not to laugh. You splash your hands in the basin. It's cold, bracing. You rub the grime from your face. Though honestly, it's more redistribution than cleaning. You stare at your reflection. You look like someone who lost a duel with a compost heap. Your shirt is stained. Your coat is clinging to your shoulders with more loyalty than you deserve. One of your boots has sprung a second leak. And your hat, once noble, now merely tragic, sits at a jaunty angle that says, "Yes, I gave up hours ago." You sigh and move on. A few more steps, and you're at the door of your tenement. It's not locked, it barely stays closed. You push it open and climb the creaky stairs, each one announcing your arrival like an old opera singer warming up. Third floor, left. Room with the cracked window and the smell of someone else's dinner. You push the door open. Inside, it's barely a room, more of a corner with ambition. A low ceiling, one cot, a wooden crate that moonlights as a table, and a shelf with exactly 3 items: a spoon, a candle, and a rock you once thought looked like Louis XIV if you squinted. You collapse onto the cot. It groans. You groan louder. Your arms go limp. Your eyes close. You breathe, but not for long, because the hay pokes through the sheet like tiny knives, and there's something in your boot that's still moving. You kick it off. A beetle scurries across the floor like it's late for a meeting. You sigh. You think about food. You have a bit of bread left. Somewhere. You pat your coat and find it, only slightly crushed. You eat it while lying down, crumbs falling onto your chest like tragic confetti. Outside, you hear a cat yowl, then silence. Somewhere, someone is playing a flute badly. Somewhere else, a fight breaks out. None of it involves you. For now. You stare at the ceiling. It leaks during rainstorms, creaks in the wind, and sometimes drops bits of plaster just to remind you who's in charge. But it's yours. Or close enough. You've slept in worse. A soft breeze creeps in through the cracked window. It carries with it a distant hint of roasted chestnuts. Probably a hallucination. You close your eyes again. Your muscles twitch with the memory of sweeping. Your dreams, when they come, are full of gutters and wheels and piles of cabbage that talk back. Historians still argue whether people like you were ever appreciated. Some claim sweepers were the unsung heroes of the city, the quiet backbone of Parisian daily life. Others suggest you were invisible, unnoticed, or even despised. You suspect it depends on whether the observer had recently stepped in manure. Your stomach rumbles. You ignore it. The city outside fades to a hush, broken only by the occasional shout or cartwheel. The wind rattles the shutters. The moon peeks through the window, casting a pale light across your floor. You are sore. You are dirty. You are exhausted. But you are home. Tomorrow, it begins again. Unless the city magically cleans itself overnight. You chuckle, then cough, then sleep. The city wakes up before you do. You know this not because you slept in, heaven forbid, but because the sounds are already swirling outside when your eyes finally drag themselves open. A rooster calls in the distance. Someone slams a shutter. A cart rattles past, and you hear a man yell about eels again. Why are there always eels? Your body protests every movement. Your arms feel like lead pipes. Your back, a tightly wound rope. But the real surprise is your left foot, which has decided to strike out on its own path of pain and swelling. You flex it gently. It responds with a cramp and what sounds like a small internal whimper. The air in your room is stale, tinged with damp wood, foot smell, and the faintest trace of onions. You slept with your coat on, again, and it now wears the creases of a man who's been folded like laundry and stored in a broom closet. You sit up slowly. Everything creaks. On your crate table, a cup with something that was once tea now resembles pond water. You sniff it. You regret sniffing it. You move on. Dressing is a quiet act of surrender. You pull on your damp shirt, your wool trousers stiff with memory, and your boots, one of which squelches. You do not investigate further. Your hat, as always, is shaped less like a triangle and more like a defeated pastry. You gather your gear, your broom, your bucket, your brush. The cart is still in the alley. You pray it hasn't been stolen or eaten overnight. Both are distinct possibilities. Downstairs, the building breathes its usual morning sigh. Someone is already arguing in the hallway. Someone else is frying something that smells like rubber and garlic. You nod to Madame Rue, who lives across the hall and never blinks. She nods back. You're not sure if that counts as a friendship, but it's the most stable relationship in your life. Outside, the morning hits you full in the face, and by morning, we mean cold, wet slap of fog and smoke. The sky hangs low, the color of unwashed linen. The streets glisten with leftover misery from yesterday, plus a fresh delivery of trash, offal, and something that smells like vinegar, but bites like ammonia. You check the alley. Your cart is still there, kind of. Someone has borrowed a wheel. You stand very still, staring at the lopsided thing like it might spontaneously fix itself. It does not. You drag it out by one handle, letting it wobble and scrape along the stones like a wooden duck with the limbs. It sounds like a dying violin and earns you 2 glares and a biscuit crumb thrown from a window. You start sweeping. Same streets, new layers. Rue des Lombards is your first task today. The wind there is aggressive, always aiming directly at your face, always bringing with it a buffet of refuse. Paper scraps, onion skins, feathers, a banana peel. You don't even know where someone gets a banana in 18th century Paris, but there it is. Slippery, accusatory. You work in silence, the rhythm mechanical now. Sweep, drag, flick, avoid puddle, wave at rat. Repeat. The rat does not wave back. A baker steps outside and tosses dishwater into the gutter without looking. You sidestep it expertly. This is a learned skill, dodging spontaneous downpours from second-story windows like some kind of gutter dancer with a death wish. You reach a pile of cabbage leaves and something else, unidentifiable. You hesitate, then poke it. It hisses. You step back. It scurries. You let it win. By now your palms are raw again. That cloth wrap didn't hold. You tear another strip from the lining of your coat and tie it around your hand. It helps. A bit. You're not the only sweeper on the job today. You see Henry across the street, dragging his broom like it insulted his mother. He's missing most of his teeth, but makes up for it with volume. He's singing today. Something vaguely operatic and wildly off-key. You salute him with your broom. He salutes back with his bucket. Across the square, the fish market is opening. You can smell it before you see it. That sharp, briny wave that announces the arrival of seafood that was fresh approximately 3 days ago. You brace yourself. Fish guts greet your boots like old friends. Scales glitter on the cobblestones, catching the light in a way that would be beautiful if they weren't stuck to blood and eyeballs. You sweep through it carefully, creating clear paths where people can step without screaming. You do this for hours, and no one thanks you. Well, not no one. A boy approaches, maybe 6 or 7, holding something behind his back. You freeze, expecting a rotten apple or a poop joke. Instead, he hands you a small flower, a daisy, slightly crushed, slightly damp. For you, he says. You blink. Because you always clean the street outside my papa's shop. You nod, wordless. He runs off. You tuck the daisy into your coat pocket, above the stains and torn seam. A bloom in a compost pile. You'd laugh if you weren't suddenly, inexplicably, holding your breath. Historians still argue whether acts of kindness were common between classes in this era. You can't speak for history. But for a second there, someone saw you as something more than a broom in a coat. That's enough. You keep sweeping. It starts to rain again. Of course it does. The rain arrives with all the subtlety of a slap from a soggy glove. Not a storm. No, nothing that theatrical. Just that slow, relentless drizzle that soaks you, molecule by molecule, until every fiber of your clothing becomes part of the Parisian water cycle. Your coat, still half wet from yesterday, accepts its fate with a damp sigh. Your hat begins to sag again, the point drooping forward like a sad little flag, surrendering to gravity. You adjust it once. It flops again. You let it go. You're back near the alleys of Les Halles, the big market square, the place where produce dreams go to rot. Carrot tops, spoiled turnips, onion skins, and cabbage leaves have coalesced into a fragrant tapestry of decay. Add water, and now it's soup. You step carefully, dragging your broom like a reluctant dance partner. The slurry clings to everything. Your boots leave prints that immediately disappear under more sludge. It's like sweeping a river that's actively trying to insult you. You pass a butcher's boy, dumping bones into the gutter. Good morning, he says with the forced cheer of someone who knows how bad the day's going to get. You nod. He points with his chin. Watch the alley. They've been using it again. Ah, yes, the piss alley. Technically, public urination is illegal. Technically. But here, tucked behind the wine shop and across from the alley, where old Madame Lenoir feeds her geese, is a narrow passageway that's become an unofficial public restroom. It smells like regret and asparagus. And it is, unfortunately, part of your beat. You hold your breath and wade in. The stones here are slicker than usual. A thin sheen of damp filth coats everything. You sweep quickly, efficiently, with the practiced motion of someone who has learned not to think too hard about what's beneath their broom. Halfway down, you find a pile of something wrapped in a shawl. You pause. It twitches. You back away. That's not your problem. You finish your sweep and escape the alley like a rat fleeing a sinking tavern. Back on the main road, things are looking lively again. Vendors are setting up under tarps. The cheese seller unwraps a wheel that's already announcing its presence from 50 paces. A chimney sweep tips his hat to you. You tip yours back, momentarily forgetting it's full of rainwater. A small waterfall runs down your collar. Delightful. As you move toward Rue des Boucheries, you feel the eyes. Not metaphorical ones, real ones. A group of well-dressed gentlemen stands near a cafe, sipping thick chocolate from porcelain cups, and discussing something in tones that suggest they've never swept anything except their own hair. One of them gestures toward you, clearly mid-anecdote. You can't hear what he's saying, but you've seen that look before. It's the, "can you believe people like that exist?" expression. You consider waving. Instead, you sweep harder. A scrap of newspaper blows past. You stomp on it, catch it with your broom, and pin it to the wall. The headline is about taxes or war or one of the usual catastrophes. You don't read the rest. You use it to wrap a half-rotten apple and push it toward the drain. The gutter here is deep, clogged with weeks of debris. You jab at it with your stick, clearing out twigs, rags, and something that might once have been alive. As the water flows freely again, you feel a flicker of satisfaction. Small wins, very small. You step back and admire the clear channel. And then a carriage barrels through, splashing the entire mess onto your legs. You close your eyes, you breathe, and you sweep. The carriage clatters off. You don't even bother looking. Whoever it was, they're already halfway to Versailles and completely unaware that they just undid 20 minutes of your labor with two wheels and a questionable sense of urgency. You walk a few more paces and lean against a wall, just long enough to check your coin pouch. Still 2 coins. You consider stopping for a hot drink, but the nearest cellar is already swarmed with apprentices, errand boys, and women trading gossip. You're not in the mood to be stared at like a raccoon who wandered into a picnic. You trudge on. Next up, the meat district. And here's where things get chewy. Rue des Boucheries is aptly named. Blood, fat, bones, and sinew, all spilled, swept, stacked, and discarded without ceremony. The butchers rinse the stones with buckets of water, but that just creates a pink stream that flows directly toward your boots. You pass one shop where a pig's head is mounted on a spike, smiling forever. You nod politely. It feels rude not to. A boy runs by carrying a liver the size of a cat. A woman dumps a bowl of entrails onto the curb. A dog barks at a goat. A goat barks back. You, broom in hand, are once again the lone barrier between civilization and complete digestive chaos. Historians still argue whether city authorities truly understood the health risks posed by this kind of waste. Some claim ordinances were passed regularly to prevent street dumping. Others argue they were symbolic at best, rules written on paper and promptly ignored by everyone not wearing a powdered wig. You believe the latter, mostly because you're currently elbow deep in meat water. You sweep carefully, channeling the runoff toward the gutter. It bubbles ominously. You try not to inhale through your nose, or mouth, or pores. Just keep sweeping. A woman nearby is scraping bones into a barrel. She sees you and tosses you a scrap of bread with a wink. You catch it midair, like it's the Holy Grail. It's slightly wet, slightly stale, and slightly better than nothing. You thank her with a tip of your hat. She grins. You're doing the work of angels, you know. You snort. Dirty ones. She laughs. You eat as you walk, sweeping as you chew. The bread tastes like salt, soot, and possibility. And then you round the corner and find a pile taller than your cart. Someone dumped a full wagon load of spoiled lettuce, wilted greens, and fish heads right in the middle of Rue Ticotone. You stop, you stare, you sigh, and you sweep. The pile on Rue Ticton is so large it deserves its own address. A veritable mountain of spoiled produce and seafood rejects, heaped together like the city had a tantrum, and this was the result. You stand before it, broom in hand, and feel an emotion best described as composted despair. The lettuce is wilted beyond recognition, floppy, slimy, clinging to cabbage leaves like sad scarves. The fish heads glare at you with eyes that accuse. Someone's tossed in a whole melon, cracked open like a skull. You wonder for a moment if this is what the end of the world looks like: quiet, smelly, and mostly leafy. You begin to sweep. Well, not sweep, sculpt. You push the heap into manageable piles, then nudge them inch by inch toward the gutter. It's not so much cleaning as it is gently encouraging entropy to move a few feet to the left. Behind you, someone whistles. You glance over your shoulder. It's Etienne, the night shift sweeper from the Marais. He's leaning on his broom like it's a tavern counter, and he's had one too many long days. Impressive, he says, nodding toward the pile. Is it sentient? Only emotionally, you reply. He chuckles. You need help? You consider it. Help means splitting whatever coin gets tossed your way. Help also means not having to wrestle a fish spine solo. You nod. Together, you and Etienne work the pile down. The rhythm becomes almost soothing. Scoop, lift, drag, sigh. Occasionally, one of you finds a surprise. A boot, a fork, a coin. Etienne pockets that one with an apologetic shrug. At one point, you uncover a wedge of cheese so old it might legally vote. Still, it goes faster with two. The pile shrinks. The gutter groans under the weight. But by the time the church bell chimes, in the distance, you can actually see stone beneath your boots again. A miracle. Etienne wipes his forehead and gives you a grin. We should form a guild. You raise an eyebrow. A guild of the grimy? He laughs. Les balayeurs nobles. You both share a chuckle at the thought. Powdered wigs, golden brooms, a coat of arms featuring a mop crossed with a chamber pot. Historians still debate whether street sweepers ever had formal associations or brotherhoods in the 1700s. There are fragments, records of cooperatives, of shared tools or mutual aid, but nothing like the guilds of tailors or masons. Still, in that moment, you and Etienne feel like the founding members of something noble, if absurd. You part ways with a nod and a shared roll of the shoulders, both of you aching in places you didn't know had nerves. He heads east. You head back towards your cart, which naturally has been moved, not stolen, just shifted, likely by a cart driver annoyed by its position, who grumbled and shoved it a few feet with the grace of an angry cow. One of the wheels is now lodged in a crack. You wrestle with it for several minutes before it finally pops loose, with a sound like a burp and a sigh. You push the cart forward. It wobbles violently, like it's trying to stage a rebellion. You bribe it with a better patch of road and a whispered promise of repair. It agrees, begrudgingly. The next street is Rue Quincampoix, narrow, crooked, and filled with whispers. You never like this one. It has a way of watching you. The buildings lean too far in, like they're listening. The stones here are uneven, the gutter barely a suggestion. It smells like wet bread and secrets. You sweep quickly. A man exits a tavern, clutching a bottle and humming. He walks past you, stops, then turns back. You missed a spot, he slurs. You glance down. He's pointing at the very center of a fresh pile of horse manure, gleaming, centered, proud. I was saving it, you say flatly. He blinks, then staggers off, presumably to offer unsolicited advice to a chimney. You handle the mess with practiced disgust. By now, you can tell the age of manure by smell alone. This one is fresh, possibly breakfast fresh. You suppress all thoughts and get to work. By the time you're done, your arms feel like boiled rope. You pause to rest. A bench appears, a rare sight, and you sit carefully, as if your bones might scatter like marbles. Your back thanks you with a creak. You remove your hat and let your scalp breathe for one blessed minute. From the house across the street, someone plays a harpsichord. The music is gentle, dreamy, faintly sad. You let yourself close your eyes, just briefly. The street is quiet. The rain has stopped. The broom rests against your knee like an old friend. And then, garde à l'eau. You freeze. A splash lands inches from your boot. You look up to see a shutter slam shut overhead. The moment is over. You sigh and sweep. The sky is darkening again. The lamplighters begin their rounds, long poles reaching to touch flames into life. The city changes hue, becomes all gold and shadow. Beautiful, in a filthy, tragic way. You round a corner and see something that makes you stop. A rose, lying in the gutter. Real, fresh, untouched. You pick it up, turning it gently in your dirt-stained fingers. It smells like something you barely remember. Garden air, soft mornings, clean hands. You tuck it behind your ear like a joke. Then you sweep. The rose stays tucked behind your ear, absurd and magnificent. It wilts slightly in the humidity, sagging like it knows what kind of day you've had, but it stays. And you let it. Because sometimes you need something beautiful near your face when everything else smells like fish guts and existential rot. Rue Saint-Honoré stretches before you like a yawning challenge. By this hour, the street is quieter, merchants packing up, horses trotting home, lamps flickering to life in upstairs windows. You can smell dinner being made, roasted onions, baked bread, and something spicy that doesn't belong to your class. Your stomach growls, loudly. You glance down at it like it's betrayed you. It has. You try to remember the last proper meal you had. You can't. It might have been that boiled egg 2 days ago, or possibly the questionable stew last Sunday that tasted like shoe and clove. You sweep. The cobblestones here are tighter, more elegant. But don't let the symmetry fool you. Filth finds a way. It seeps in the cracks like water in winter, lodging between stones and refusing to leave. Your broom catches on something stuck. You pry it free. It's a peach pit wrapped in a piece of lace. You blink at it. Paris, you think. You weird romantic mess. You make your way toward the Palais Royal. You're not allowed to sweep near the palace itself. There are official groundskeepers for that. Men with uniforms and neat tools and the luxury of privacy. But the streets leading up to it? Fair game. And they're worse than usual, because nobles party hard. There are broken bottles, wilted flowers, a whole roast pigeon, untouched tragically, and a single heeled shoe with a bow so frilly it could double as a curtain. You sigh. You don't even bother asking questions anymore. As you push the broom forward, you notice a line of powdered footmen unloading crates from a carriage. One of them sneezes into a white glove, then immediately resumes lifting crystal. You try not to stare. You fail. One footman spots you. He nods once, not dismissively, not cruelly, just nods, like you exist, like you're part of the machinery that makes the city work. You nod back, a little stunned by the civility. It's disorienting. And then someone yells at you from a balcony. You there. You've missed the corner. You squint up. A man in a ruffled nightshirt is gesturing wildly toward a spot on the far end of the street where a dead pigeon and a fan have entered into what appears to be a long-term relationship. You sigh, loudly, but you sweep toward it. The fan is nice, gold painted, slightly bent, decorated with little hand-painted cupids who look deeply disappointed in how their lives turned out. You scoop it carefully into your cart, not out of sentiment, but because it might make a decent barter item later, or at least a window prop to keep your attic from boiling during summer. The pigeon gets a less ceremonial removal. You continue. As you pass a bakery, a familiar voice calls out, "You again." It's Elise, the apprentice baker. Covered in flour, hair tied with twine, she stands in the doorway, holding a tray of misfit rolls. Burnt edges, odd shapes, the kind no customer wants, but every sweeper dreams of. She tosses one. You catch it. "Merci," you say, mouth already full. She grins. "Try not to sweep it into a gutter this time." You nod solemnly. No promises. She laughs and goes back inside. You finish chewing, then tuck the rest into your coat. You don't trust your stomach not to ruin it with haste. Better to savor. Later. Maybe even in bed if the rats leave you a corner. The street grows darker. The lamps are fully lit now, casting flickering shadows on the walls. People are going home. You, however, are not. There are still a few corners left to clear. You make your way toward Pont Neuf. The bridge always gives you pause. The river beneath it is dark, loud, alive. Some nights, when the wind is just right, it almost smells clean. Almost. You stop in the middle and lean against the stone rail. Below, the Seine churns. You watch a boat pass, a wide barge carrying barrels and men with scarves over their faces. The oars dip rhythmically, hypnotic. You don't envy them, but you recognize the shared ache of people whose days are measured by sweat and splinters. A breeze picks up. The rose behind your ear flutters. You look out over Paris. From up here, it looks soft. Golden lights, gentle clouds, shadows enlace across the rooftops. It's easy to forget how much of it you've just scraped off your boots. You hear a couple approach behind you. A woman giggles. A man says something poetic about the moon. You quickly move on. Romance makes you itchy. Back on the far side of the bridge, Rue Dauphine waits for you. It's quieter here. Residential, tidy, almost smug. The kind of street where people pretend filth doesn't happen. You sweep anyway, because filth always happens. You find a torn glove, a broken spectacles frame, and a crumpled love note that reads, "She said no, again." You place it gently in the gutter, like a paper boat heading out to sea. Historians still argue whether Paris of the 18th century was romantic filth or just filth. But the truth, you think, is somewhere in between. For every broken bottle, there's a fresh flower. For every rat, a child with a daisy. For every street drenched in misery, a corner that smells faintly of cinnamon. You keep sweeping, because someone has to. Because beneath it all, this city is beautiful, and someone's got to clean up after it. The broom is heavier now, but so are your eyelids. Still, you sweep. Rue Dauphine gives way to Rue de Nesle, a quieter, narrower street where the stones are smoother, but the shadows deeper. The lamps flicker less here, some are out altogether, and the dimness feels intentional, like the buildings are trying to hush you as you pass. You tread softly, not because you're trying to be respectful, but because your legs feel like overcooked noodles and you're afraid they might fold at any moment. You drag the broom with a kind of gentle stubbornness, the way a child pulls a stuffed animal behind them after a tantrum. The gutters here are deceptively clear. They look clean, but you've learned that in Paris nothing is ever clean, just recently hidden. You poke your broom into a suspicious corner and uncover a bottle, 3 bits of glass, and a handful of broken almond shells. A secret snack spot, perhaps, or just another monument to the city's ongoing battle with hygiene. A nearby shutter creaks open. An old woman stares down at you through a window with lace curtains. Her face is carved like dry wood, eyes sharp. She watches you for a long beat, then closes the shutter without a word. You half expect a pigeon to follow. Instead, it's a shoe. You dodge it by instinct. It lands beside you with a wet thump. You sigh and sweep. At the end of the street, you pause by a water trough. It's meant for horses, but you splash your face in it anyway. The water is shockingly cold, enough to slap you awake. You gasp quietly and run wet hands through your hair, plastering it back into a more organized mess. A momentary refresh. A street sweeper's spa day. Reflected in the water, you see the rose still tucked behind your ear, a little limp now, a little browning, but still there. You smile at yourself, just a little. The smile fades quickly, of course, when you hear the sound of shattering glass. You follow the sound to Rue Christine, where a street vendor's cart has upended itself in a most dramatic fashion. Apples rolling, glass jars broken, a collection of wooden spoons lying in defeat. The vendor is on his knees, scooping up what he can, muttering curses in a dialect that seems to be mostly vowels and spitting. You help. You gather apples into a pile, careful not to step in the honey that has pooled around one of the broken jars. Your broom becomes a makeshift scoop. The vendor doesn't thank you, but he grunts less after you're done. Progress. You resume your route, now sticky from the knees down. The honey clings to the hem of your trousers like a needy cat. You stop and use a bit of gutter water to rinse it off. It's only mildly successful. Next, you pass a small church, nestled between 2 townhouses. Its door is open slightly, and warm candlelight spills onto the steps. You pause, tempted, not to pray, just to sit. But there's still more to do. You sweep. By now the city has curled into itself. Fewer people, fewer voices. Just the soft clop of the occasional horse, the gentle rattle of distant wheels, and the sigh of wind through narrow alleys. And rats. So many rats. You see one dart past, with a hunk of cheese in its mouth. It moves like a professional thief. Quick, low, confident. You salute it. Behind you someone sneezes. You spin around startled. A man sits slumped in a doorway, wrapped in a coat that might once have been blue. His shoes are missing. His eyes are open but glassy. You hesitate. You approach carefully. He doesn't move. You lean closer, still breathing. You sigh, then gently sweep around him, clearing a path so passers-by won't trip or step on him. It's not much, but it's something. Historians still argue about the street people of Paris. How many were there? What caused their fall? Who cared for them? The records are patchy. The truth, you think, is that there were always more than anyone wanted to admit. And caring? That was rare. Mostly it was just avoidance with a touch of guilt. You know this, because you're always one bad week from joining them. You press on, Your broom now feels like it's made of wet bricks. Your arms scream. Your spine hums like a violin string pulled too tight. But you keep going. The street ahead is Rue de Seine, another winding path, another web of refuse and puddles and wax from last night's lanterns. You sweep in curves now, lazy, hypnotic, each stroke a lullaby, each motion a prayer. You reach a small square with a dry fountain in the middle. It hasn't worked in years. Someone's painted a smiley face on it in chalk. You sit on the edge, just for a moment. Above you, stars peek out from the cloud-smudged sky. You count 3 before a veil of smoke hides them again. A drunk couple stumbles past, laughing about something that probably isn't funny. They bump into your cart, knock your bucket loose. You wait. They don't notice. You retrieve the bucket, resettle it, and let the moment pass. The city is quieter now, breathing slower, almost sleeping. You get up. One more street, always one more, and you sweep. Rue des Grands Augustins is your last circuit of the night. Or at least, it should be. That's how it started. Just one last pass, one last push, one last corner. But Paris is a city that hoards chaos in its sleeves and then shakes them out the second you think you're finished. You step into the street with the limp of a soldier who's seen too many battles. Your broom scrapes along the stones in a soft, dragging rhythm. The moon has climbed now, round and pale like a bruised pearl, casting weak shadows and highlighting the worst of what the day has left behind. And the rats are having a party. 3 of them scatter as you arrive, one dragging something that may have once been bread or possibly a tax document. Another stands on its hind legs, boldly watching you like a guard at a palace gate. You raise your broom. It shrugs and vanishes. You sweep. There's always more. The alley here smells like damp wool and milk that had ambitions but failed. You press forward anyway, guiding the refuse into predictable little drifts. Onion skins, bits of paper, orange peels, and the occasional mystery meat, each pushed toward the grates, like herding particularly defiant children toward bath time. Your arms ache, but your brain has gone soft and quiet, moving through a fog of repetition and habit. The sweeping is almost meditative now. 1, 2, 3, flick. 1, 2, scrape. Breathe in. Don't. Flick. Behind you, a dog howls. Somewhere nearby, a bottle breaks. You don't turn around. You just keep going. You pass an old theater, boarded up, the posters half torn and fluttering. One advertises a romantic tragedy. The lovers stare into each other's eyes forever, caught mid-swoon. Someone has drawn mustaches on both. You smile. For a moment, your body forgets the grime, the aching hands, the missing breakfast, the dinner that never came. You're just a man walking beneath the moonlight, pushing a broom like it's a violin bow, and the street is his stage. Then something drips on you from above. You don't ask. You don't look. You just say, "Of course," and move on. A few steps later, you find something unexpected. A coin. Not copper, silver, clean, shiny, alone. You freeze. You look left, right. No one. You crouch and pick it up. It's real. Not counterfeit, not chewed. You bite it lightly. It fights back. Real silver. You pocket it slowly, reverently. That's a loaf of bread and maybe a wedge of cheese. Maybe even a bit of ham if you're feeling reckless. You stand taller. For one glorious second, you feel rich. And then a gust of wind smacks your hat off your head. You chase it. It skitters across the cobblestones, dodging between puddles like it's suddenly come alive and decided it deserves a better owner. You finally pin it with your broom, rescue it from a pile of feathers, and jam it back onto your head. You're laughing, a little, a tired laugh, but still, it counts. You reach the far end of the street and turn back toward the Seine. The wind's stronger here, bringing with it the scent of damp stone, chimney smoke, and river salt. The streets glisten in patches, lamps flicker, the world is dim gold and deep blue, and then you hear singing. A soft voice, female, gentle and unsure, like someone singing to remember, not to perform. It echoes between the buildings, drifting like a lullaby meant for no one in particular. You stop. Not because you're tired, though you are, but because the sound feels like it's meant for moments like this, when the city is between breaths, when even the cobblestones seem to pause and listen. You close your eyes, you sway, and then it stops. You open your eyes and return to your work, because that's what you do, always. Historians still argue whether street sweepers like you were viewed as public servants or tolerated nuisances. The truth, as always, is somewhere in the gutter. You are essential and invisible, vital and forgotten. Paris needs you, but does not love you. And that's fine. You don't sweep for gratitude. You sweep because someone has to. Because the city never stops, and neither do its messes. You pass a pair of drunk students painting something obscene on a wall. They see you, giggle, and scurry off. You erase their masterpiece with one swipe of your broom. Art is fleeting. So is decency. A constable rounds the corner and nods at you. You nod back. No words, just recognition. Mutual understanding from two men bound to this city, each cleaning up in their own way. You reach your cart again. You lean on it. Your knees click like castanets. The broom, soaked and splintering, hangs loosely in your hand. The wind shifts, and you catch a scent. Fresh bread. Somewhere nearby, someone's baking for tomorrow. You smile, then turn toward home. The walk back is slow, not out of laziness. There's nothing lazy about what your body is going through, but because every step requires careful negotiation. Your ankles wobble like loose hinges. Your hips have adopted a rhythmic creak. You're pretty sure one of your knees has decided it's French now and will strike unless given wine. Still, you keep moving. You cross the Pont Neuf again, now lit only by moonlight and the last few flickering lanterns. The Seine below you sloshes gently, whispering secrets to its own reflection. Somewhere downstream, a barge rocks against its moorings, the sound muffled and hollow like a forgotten heartbeat. You stop halfway across and lean on the stone railing. Your hands, now permanently shaped like broom handles, press against the cold stone. You look down at the river. It's dark, endless, and oddly comforting. For a brief second, you wonder what would happen if you just dropped everything. The broom, the cart, the expectation. Would Paris notice? Would it hiccup or simply flow around? The absence like water around a rock? You shake the thought away. You're not done yet. The city still needs sweeping. You continue, past the booksellers, now closed. Their carts are covered with tarps, but the smell of paper still lingers. Ink, leather, dust, and ideas no one has time for. You think of a book you once found, pages torn but still legible. You tried to read it once, but the words kept drifting away like dreams. You pass the wine shop with the always lit candle in the window. A superstition, they say, keeps the bad spirits out. Judging by the broken glass out front, it's not working. You sweep anyway. Near Rue du Chaquipeche, one of the narrowest streets in the city, you hear a scuffle. Two shadows emerge, arguing over a bottle. You back into a doorway and watch silently as they stumble past, oblivious to the world, to you, to anything that isn't the next sip. You've seen them before. You'll see them again, You sweep the broken cork from their wake. The closer you get to your neighborhood, the more familiar the stones become. That crack by the lamppost, that missing tile near the drain, that small scorch mark where someone tried to light fireworks in November. You smile, home. The tenement looms ahead, squat and tired, leaning ever so slightly like a man who knows better than to stand up straight. You turn into the alley, expecting to find your cart exactly where you left it. And you do, sort of. It's been moved again, this time, mercifully, not far, just turned at an angle. The wheel has given up. Fully. It lies flat beside the cart like a dropped monocle, dramatic and final. You kneel and examine it with the care of a battlefield surgeon. The wood is cracked, the iron band split. You could maybe patch it tomorrow, with twine if you can find some, and a bit of wax. It'll hold, probably, long enough to break again. You lift the broken wheel gently into the cart, along with your broom, bucket, and brush. You cover the lot with your ragged tarp and secure it with the rope that has lived 4 lives and is on its 5th. You pat the cart like it's a loyal dog. Good job, old friend. And then you climb the stairs. 3 flights, each step louder than the last. You pass Madame Rue's door. She's snoring, or cackling, or possibly both. You reach your attic and push the door open with your hip. It sticks, as always, protesting your return. Inside, the room greets you with silence. You drop your coat onto the crate. You sit on the edge of your cot. Your boots, one squeaky, one silent, come off with a squelch. You set them near the wall, upside down, so the rats can't move in. Again, you stretch. Slowly. One arm at a time. The joints pop like firecrackers. Your shoulders sag like wet laundry on a clothesline. But you made it. You made it. You dig into your coat and pull out your treasures. One slightly crushed piece of bread from Elise. One silver coin. One bent fan. One flower, now browning at the edges but still smelling faintly like hope. You place them on your crate table like holy relics. You lay back on the cot. The straw pokes through the sheet. The pillow is more burlap than fluff. But none of that matters, because you are off your feet. You close your eyes, and just before sleep takes you, you think, I'll do it again tomorrow. Because someone has to. Because this city, this beautiful, maddening, filthy city, never sleeps. So someone must sweep. Morning creeps in like a debt collector, quiet, gray, and uninvited. The first thing you notice is that you're already awake. The second is that you were never really asleep, just sort of horizontal with your eyes shut, drifting in and out of dreams that smelled suspiciously like the fish market. Your body feels like it's been pre-chewed. You sit up slowly, every muscle issuing formal complaints. The room greets you with its usual combination of chill, damp, and someone else's cooking seeping through the cracks. You breathe an onion, bread crust, and just a whisper of despair. Another day, another broom, another city's worth of people walking around, completely unaware of the sheer quantity of unpleasantness waiting for them on the cobblestones, and of the very tired person making sure they don't step in all of it at once. You shuffle to the door and splash your face from the jug near your bed. The water is cold. You are less so. Your reflection in the cracked mirror confirms that you still look like a scarecrow who's seen too much. Hat askew, coat stained, but somehow present. Boots on, cart retrieved, broom in hand, and out into the street you go. It's early, too early for the fishmongers, too early even for the rats to be ambitious, but not too early for trouble, because Rue des Lombards is flooded. Not a gentle trickle, Not an overnight puddle, a full blown shoelace deep deluge, with refuse bobbing along like miserable little boats. You stare at it, blinking. At the far end, a broken pipe hisses and spits like an angry cat. Someone must have knocked it loose while dumping waste, or possibly just out of boredom. This is Paris, after all. You sigh, hoist your broom, and wade in. Your boots fill instantly. You're no longer walking. You're marinating. You sweep. Each stroke of your broom barely makes a dent. The water sloshes, slaps, returns. You might as well be trying to sweep the river. But still, you push forward. Not because it's working, but because it's what you do. Halfway through, a merchant opens his shutters and yells something incoherent about drainage. You nod as if to say, "Yes, sir, I too enjoy yelling at water." He slams the shutters with the kind of dramatic flair usually reserved for failing playwrights. You press on. Around the corner, the bakery's door opens. Elise again, holding two rolls this time. "You looked drowned yesterday," she says. "I was." She hands you the warmer of the two. For bravery. You take it with quiet reverence. Historians still argue whether bakers were truly the backbone of 18th century Parisian neighborhoods. Some say yes, bread being the lifeblood of the people. Others point out how often bakeries were looted during food shortages. You think it's both. Bread makes peace and war with equal enthusiasm. You tuck the second roll into your coat. The first disappears into your mouth faster than your brain can catch up. Warmth spreads briefly, like hope. You thank her with a nod and a half smile. That's all you have energy for today. You're still damp. The sky, meanwhile, is deciding whether or not to rain again. The clouds have gathered like old gossiping ants, gray, swollen, ready to burst with drama. You glance upward and issue a wordless threat. It rains anyway. Of course it does. You're back at Rue de Lavandière, Laundry District, which, ironically, is one of the filthiest corners in the city. When the washerwomen finish scrubbing linens in the river, they dump the buckets wherever is convenient. Spoiler: convenience often looks like the middle of the street. You dodge three such splashes and catch the fourth in the shoulder. You don't even flinch. You just look down at your coat, nod grimly, and mutter, "We meet again." The washerwoman who did it shrugs. Better you than the judge's laundry. You suppose she's right. You push your cart up the street, lopsided now, ever since that wheel incident, and begin clearing away last night's grime. Feathers from a pillow fight, orange peels, a letter, unopened, with a heart drawn on the back. You pause. You pick it up. It's addressed to no one. You tuck it into your coat. Who knows? Maybe it'll come in handy. Or maybe it's just nice to think someone loved someone enough to send this and lost it along the way. You continue. The church bells toll. 7 chimes. You've been working 2 hours already. The city is properly awake now. Vendors shout. Hooves clatter. Steam rises from the bread carts and spills down the alleys like ghost smoke. People flood the streets, stepping around you like you're part of the pavement. You are, in a way. No one thanks you, but no one yells either. That's as good as affection in your line of work. A child runs past and yells, "It's the dirt night." You freeze. You grin. You tip your hat to him like a proper knight would. He laughs and disappears around the corner. You stand there, feeling strangely proud. The broom suddenly feels a little lighter. You sweep, because the city won't. The sun finally breaks through the clouds, not in a triumphant golden cherub singing kind of way, more like a weak spotlight peeking past the curtain, wondering if anyone's still interested in the performance. It splashes across the cobblestones in Rue de l'Arbre Sec, glinting off puddles, highlighting the glittering chaos of everyday debris. You're already there, halfway through, sweeping a tangled mess of straw sardine tins, a shoe buckle, and a truly heroic number of oyster shells. Who eats oysters for breakfast? Someone wealthy enough not to clean up after themselves, you suppose. The broom, despite all odds, still holds. The bristles are worn to nubs, like chewed pencils, and the handle has developed a mild sway, less tool, more dance partner. You've begun to favor it with your left side since your right shoulder's begun to hum ominously whenever you lift past the waist. But none of that matters now, because this stretch of road is nearly clean. You look back at your path, like a line carved through a battlefield, flanked on either side by refuse and filth, but right down the middle, order, brief, temporary, fragile, but still, it's something. And then, from a second-story window above you, garde à l'eau, you don't even flinch. The chamber pot splashes a few feet from your boots, sending a wave of unidentified liquid across your recently swept cobbles. You stare at it. You blink. You sigh. And sweep again. It's like painting a masterpiece and having someone immediately throw soup at it. You round the corner and spot someone already waiting for you. Lucette. She's sitting on the edge of a stoop, smoking something that smells like time and regret. Her apron is stained, her boots caked in drying mud. Missed the sunrise, she says. Didn't miss much. She flicks ash from her sleeve and eyes your cart. Wheel still dead? You nod. Spite's holding it together. She stands and joins you. For a moment, you're both silent, two exhausted figures in a street too wide for your small victories. Then she points to a crate behind her. Found some nails. Could help the wheel. You smile. Or impale the wheel. Details. You set to work together, crouched beside the cart. She hammers with the handle of a cleaver. You hold the wood steady with your boot. The wheel groans, complains, then settles. It's not perfect, not even good, but it turns again. Progress. Historians still argue whether women like Lucette were officially employed or just stubborn enough to do the job anyway. There are no records of their pay, uniforms, or pension, but everyone remembers seeing them, boots in gutters, sleeves rolled up, broom in hand. The city forgets names but remembers the outline of the effort. Lucette slaps the cart once, like congratulating a mule, then nods and wanders off, down another alley. You return to Rue Saint-Antoine, one of the grander boulevards, now gradually filling with midday bustle. It's wide, busy, and full of horse traffic, which means one thing: so much poop. You take a deep breath and charge in. Every few feet, fresh droppings, some recent, some historically significant. You develop a rhythm. Sweep, scrape, drag, dodge. Your boots squish. Your bucket sloshes. You feel yourself detaching from your body a little, like you're watching a parody of your own life from outside. It's oddly relaxing, until the pigs show up. You're not hallucinating. There's a small herd of pigs, half a dozen, maybe more, snorting, squealing, trundling straight down the boulevard like they've been given a map and a mission. You step aside as they pass, one brushing against your leg with a grunt that says, "You think your job's bad?" They vanish as quickly as they came. You find pig tracks in their wake. You sweep those too, because why not? You reach the bakery again around noon. Elise is gone, but someone's left a half loaf of rye on the window ledge. No note, just bread. You stare at it for a moment, then take it. You eat as you walk, chewing slowly, savoring the way the crust crunches and the inside springs back. It's dry, but warm. You tuck the last piece into your pocket for later. You pass a group of children playing with a hoop and stick laughing as they narrowly miss crashing into your cart. One of them calls out, "It's the sweeping night again." You bow slightly. Your hat flops forward in response. Laughter, real bright, echoing laughter. You round the corner into a quieter street. There's a cat sunning itself on a warm bit of stone. It eyes you, unimpressed, but doesn't run. You tip your hat again. The cat yawns. A woman approaches with a bundle of flowers. She pauses beside you. "Do you want one?" You blink. She plucks a small yellow bloom from the bunch and tucks it into your buttonhole before you can protest. "There," she says. "Now Paris smells a bit better." She walks away. You stare at the flower, stunned. Then you smile. You keep sweeping, not because it's easy, not because you're thanked, but because even the streets deserve to look a little loved. You've been sweeping for hours. Not just today, though yes, today too, but always. That's how it feels now, as though the broom has grafted itself to your soul and you've become an extension of the city's plumbing system. The quiet drip, the steady scrub, the unspoken contract. You carry the filth so others don't have to see it. And now, it's evening again. Rue Montorgueil lies before you, painted gold and plum in the sunset haze. Lanterns blink awake one by one, as if reluctant to face what the day has left behind. The street is warm with the last gasps of sunlight, and for once, it's almost quiet. Not silent. Paris never is, but subdued. Like the city has eaten too much and needs to undo its corset. You make your way slowly down the lane, sweeping in long, lazy arcs. This is more ritual than labor now. You're not cleaning, you're soothing, lulling the cobblestones to sleep, like tucking in a row of very dirty, very stubborn children. A child runs past with a paper crown and a stick. He shouts, "I'm the King of France," before tripping on his own feet and laughing like it's the best joke anyone's ever told. You nod toward him, then back at your broom. The real monarchy of France is three bristles and a pine handle, held together by twine and spite. You pass a musician playing a violin outside a cafe. The notes dance through the street like soap bubbles, fragile, unexpected, beautiful. You pause for a second, just to feel it. He sees you and gives you a little bow. You sweep on. The smell of roasted garlic wafts from a window. Your stomach rumbles again. That bread from earlier is a distant memory. You contemplate trading your last copper for a bowl of stew. Then remember, you still have that silver coin. You reach into your coat. It's still there, cold and heavy in your palm. You don't spend it, not yet. You pass the same butcher's stall you passed this morning. It's closed now. Empty crates, a few stubborn stains left on the stones. You sweep them, not because anyone asked, but because you're here. Because if you don't, no one will. Because that's how the city keeps moving. Someone sweeping the leftover blood so tomorrow feels less haunted. You reach your alley. Your cart is waiting. The wheel is miraculously still attached. The rope is still doing its best. You load the broom, the bucket, the brush. The fan you found yesterday is tucked in the corner. Still absurd, still wonderful. You cover it all with the tarp and tie the knots with fingers that can barely grip. Done. For today. You step back, roll your shoulders, and look up. The sky is lavender now. The rooftops are silhouettes. The city breathes out. You walk home. The stairs groan in greeting. You creak louder. Madame Rue's door is ajar. You nod. She nods, still not blinking. Inside your attic, nothing has changed. The straw mattress, the cracked bowl, the dusty window with its view of nothing in particular. But somehow it feels earned. You remove your boots with a sound like wet corks and set them by the wall. You wash your face in the cold water. You sit on the cot. And from your coat, you take out three things: the silver coin, the paper heart from the gutter, and the fading rose from 2 nights ago. You line them up on the crate like treasure, because they are. You lay down, you sigh, and for once you don't think about the smell. You think about the boy who called you a knight. You think about Elise's rye bread and the washerwoman who didn't apologize. You think about the violin in the street and the paper heart and the rose and the silver coin. You think about tomorrow, and then you don't, because sleep finally wins. So now let your breath settle. You've walked all day through crooked streets, past steaming drains and candlelit windows. You've pushed a broom across cobblestones carved by centuries, gathered the weight of a city in your palms, and poured it gently into the gutter. And though your bones are tired and your boots have never been dry, you've made it. You are more than the muck. You are the rhythm beneath the noise, the unnoticed hand making beauty possible. You are the quiet end of chaos. Let that sink in. Let the image of flickering lanterns drift through your mind like a sleepy breeze. Picture the sand gliding past under a velvet sky. Listen to the creak of shutters, the murmur of pigeons settling into stone, the fading melody of a violin at twilight. Let it all blur. Let it all soften. There is no broom in your hand now, no stench on your coat, no sore shoulders to carry. Just quiet, just calm, just a world waiting to be forgotten for a while. So close your eyes, friend. Paris will still be there tomorrow, and for once tonight, someone else can do the sweeping. Sleep well,